Hello everyone, my name is Scott McCrae and I'm one pissed off American. The reason why I'm pissed off is because, well, up until this last election, I'm speaking of the election where Trump got elected, I basically didn't pay attention to politics. And because I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't interested. But because of Trump, I got interested and I followed it very closely. And somewhere along the line, I thought that he would be a somebody who would speak out and actually tell the truth about what happened on 9/11. Um, I think maybe because it had something to do with him talking about we're going to find out what's on the 28 pages. Um, so I just, at that point, I think I just assumed that he was basically a 9/11 truther. Um, However, after he got elected, and I think it was here just fairly recently in September of 2017, he gave a speech where he talked about basically, you know, not giving any kind of a deadline when to get out of Afghanistan and so on. And he gave the reason was because we owed it to the American people or the world or something to stay there because of what happened on 9/11, where he basically implied that it was terrorists from outside the United States who attacked us on 9/11. That I know is false. It may be true that somebody hijacked planes and things like that. However, it was our own government who did it. It was actually a false flag operation where our own United States government, one way or another, or some faction of our government, set it up. And um, and it's not just some dark part of our government. It goes right up to Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and all. They all knew about it because they all lied about it. They all helped to cover it up. So it's not like they were somehow tricked into it themselves. They're a part of it. They're a part of the whole problem. So I thought Trump would be one of the ones who, or the one who would actually come out and expose that. And so basically, that was one of the primary reasons why I supported Trump. Now, however, having realized what he said or heard what he said, I realized that no, he's also um, a big fat liar, and he is perpetuating this lie that has led to the death of thousands of Americans and millions of people in other countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the other wars that we uh, participate in, or actually, I should say, have started. So that's why I'm a pissed off American. The other reason why I'm pissed off is because I can see that the United States is basically going down the tubes. It doesn't appear that the situation is going to get fixed. Again, I thought that Trump was going to be the one who would fix it. But one of two things are happening. Well, first of all, I thought it's possible that maybe there's basically a gun to Trump's head, and that's why he's saying what he's saying about, what he said in the speech in September about staying in Afghanistan. Um, there's a gun to his head, and he's being forced to say these things. However, I went back and I looked at some videos where Trump, I think the day of or the day after the attacks, basically he said, yeah, it looks like there was, bombs in the building. The buildings came down due to some sort of explosives. But then a few days after that, he totally changed his story, and he said, yeah, planes can, and all the fuel can cause enough heat to cause the buildings to collapse, and there's just nothing we could do about it. So it seems to me like his first statement, he wasn't aware of any type of a plan to do it. But his second statement, he evidently was told what was going on in some way, or he was told to somehow back this other idea that just fire could bring the buildings down. Now, this is particularly troubling when we're talking about Trump, since we know that Donald Trump is a builder and he's surrounded by architects and engineers who certainly could tell him that that's impossible. Buildings, steel frame buildings, don't just crumble because of fires in the building. Possibly they might topple over. When we're looking at Building 7, possibly, it could collapse partially on one side and, tend to topple one way if one of the, main columns melted or shifted, but there would not be a symmetrical global collapse at free fall. And even with the Twin Towers, those buildings would not almost fall at free fall. There is no way. And there's no way a very small part of the building sitting on top, as in the second one to collapse, had a smaller portion on top. There's no way that small portion could possibly crush the lower portion. It might fall a little bit and then crush a few floors and then topple over, but it's not going to crush it all the way down to the bottom in about 11 seconds. That's just, it's just ridiculous. Obviously, physically impossible, which all of the architects and engineers would, Trump being the kind of guy he is, I'm sure he probably would say to them, hey, come on, tell me the real story here. Is this possible? And they would say, no way, it's not possible. So Trump had to have known, very early on that those buildings did not collapse due to the planes hitting them or the fire. And so, he lied way back then. And I guess when it comes to 28 pages, maybe he lied about that so that people would vote for him. And now he's continuing to lie. So it's a continuation of lies is what I'm trying to get at. I don't really think it's that they've got a gun to his head. And, maybe they've got a gun to his head too for other reasons. But it's not that's the only reason, because he's been lying for a long time about that. And then, of course, there's a problem with Hillary Clinton running around free when she's obviously a criminal, and he's not doing anything about it and not putting enough pressure on Sessions to have him do his job. He's not firing Sessions and putting somebody else in there. What the hell's going on? It's just very, very screwed up. So, and I honestly, because it is so screwed up, I don't see it getting any better. And it looks to me like it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So, because it's not improving. It's not, Comey's still free. Hillary Clinton's still free. Congress is not up in arms about it. Only people that are up in arms about it are some people on YouTube. Here and there, there's people, American people, I think, are pissed off about it, but nothing's being done about it. It's like, what? Also, the whole 9/11 thing. There doesn't seem to be one senator who is outspoken against 9/11. 9/11 just passed by. It's right, today is like the 20, I think it's the 24th of September 2017. So, it wasn't too many days ago. And I didn't hear one senator say boo about 9/11 being a lie or whatever. And by the way, it was just a few days, I think, before 9/11, where there was a report, not a report, I should say, it was a 2-year investigation into the collapse of Building 7 that a university did. I think it's, I believe it's, I don't want to say exactly, but anyway, highly respected university. Their focus, I believe, is on architectural and engineering. They just came out and said that, and they had two of the students did independent models, using computer, software to, reconstruct the buildings with all of the elements that held those buildings up, or the building up. We're talking about Building 7, and then did the simulations with fire and everything, and the Building 7 did not collapse. It could not collapse, even if they adjusted the software to extremes. It still wouldn't collapse. So, we have very recent evidence that Building 7 did not collapse due to fire. Obviously, it was a planned demolition, an implosion. There was nothing, we didn't see anything exploding outwardly, so it was an implosion, not an explosion, because, by the way, Building 7 didn't have basically an exoskeleton like the Twin Towers had. That's why with the Twin Towers we saw an explosion, because those outer columns had to be exploded in order for the building to fall, because the exterior walls, which were made up of columns, interlocking, they also held the building up. They were a big, they were a part of the support system, not just the inner columns, but also the exterior columns. And so that's why there had to be an explosion, which you can see the video evidence obviously shows the walls being exploded outward with huge, chunks of columns, many tons being flung at about, I think they've clocked it at 70, 70 miles per hour, and then, thrown out, and then they end up getting lodged into the buildings next to the Twin Towers. So, a lot of force to do that, a lot of explosive force. So, anyway, that's a little bit of another topic, which I want to talk about later. But so obviously, Building 7 came down due to explosives. It was a demolition. But, and again, it's been proven by this university now, which is in complete contradiction with NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, who basically is a government organization which was used to cover up the government's, lies about 9/11. So it's a cover-up. It's been a cover-up from day one. And then they used the NIST, to supposedly scientifically, cover up their lies. by saying that all the buildings came down due to fire. What a bunch of crap. So, okay, and then again, getting back to the politicians, all of them are silent on it. They're all, I think even Rand Paul, he doesn't say, it's a bunch of crap, which is what it is. These buildings. Yeah, I think in order to become a senator, they must have to sign something that says, we promise, we swear on our lives that we will never say anything contrary to the government's, their official explanation for what happened on 9/11. Must be, right? They must. And then, so that's all the senators, or all of the legislators, nobody speaks against, and all of the judges, right? The president of the United States, everybody, right? Everybody in government sticks to this lie. Okay, now, American people, there's a lot of American people, of course, that also still believe the lie. Um, and, there's reasons for it. Because it's difficult to believe that your own country would do such terrible things to its own people, and then use that as a pretense to go to war against other nations. So it's understandable. It took me, once I finally learned about it, or realized it, I should say, because of a friend gave me a DVD. I think it was something like Zeitgeist or Loose Change. After I watched, one or two of those videos, I realized that it was impossible for those buildings to fall because of fire. It had to have been planned, and if it's planned, then it had to have been done in advance, and if it was done in advance, it had to be done by some part of our government, and our government was obviously covering it up, so therefore it's all done by our government. So but even after I saw the evidence and I worked with it in my mind, it took me about a month, and during that month I had a stomach ache almost continuously, because I didn't want to believe that my government could be so corrupt. My government, who I thought were the good guys, the ones with the white hat running around the world fixing the problems, the bringers of freedom to the rest of the world. I had a hard or difficult time believing that. And so it took me a long time to digest it, and then to finally come to grips with the truth of it, which was that yes, my government did that. So I can understand why the American people, my own family members who I've talked to about this, still believe what their government is telling them. So there's a percentage, I don't know, let's just say it's maybe, I don't know, about, let's say 50%. And I think that's pretty accurate, or maybe it's 60% still believe the government's official story, maybe 40% don't. They have some questions about it. Okay. And then maybe of the 40%, let's just say, I would say, I don't know, maybe 50% of the 40%. So let's say 20% total know for sure it was done, because of demolitions. They're clear on it. They know absolutely that the buildings were brought down because of demolitions, because after all, there was explosive material found in all the dust, nanothermite chips, which when ignited, at a fairly low temperature, which only nanothermite would ignite at a lower temperature, they're extremely explosive. and they produce little tiny microspheres of iron, which this is what thermite does, right? All the residues is there that thermite does and all this, okay? Only difference between nanothermite and thermite is it's so finely made it can ignite at a lower temperature. So anyway, that's in the dust, and so enough of us know about that, and so therefore we know, okay, there it is, conclusive evidence in our minds that it was done. It was a planned demolition, and somehow thermite was used in the demolition. So let's say that's 20% of the American population believe that. Well, if that's the case, then at least 20% of government officials, senators, legislators, president, whatever, at least 20%, at least 20%. And I would think it'd be more because these people should be more in the know, right? Because I know for sure it's a fact that this happened. That our government actually did blow up those buildings one way or another and covered it up so that they could go to war. So, but a minimum 20% of all the senators would have to know, minimum, but not one talks about it. And it's the key issue. I mean, it's actually bigger than the fact that Hillary Clinton should go to jail and Comey should be in jail, and maybe Clapper and all these other guys should be behind bars, because it's like the more fundamental problem. It's why we're in these wars. It's it's huge, and it's been being covered up since Bush. So Obama covered it up, and now Trump is covering it up, and Clinton covered it up, and they're all covering it up, and all the politicians are covering it up. So it's the biggest thing. They're all lying about it. So they're all, and Americans are dying because of it. So there's nothing bigger than that. It's the primary lie. And for the people who say, oh, that was back then, it's over, let's move on. We don't need to, dwell on the past. Let's move on. No. It's still here right now. It's not, yes, the event happened in the past, but it's still, actually, it's worse now than then. Then is when it happened. Now we're seeing the chain reaction effects of it. And it's worse today than it was then. More people are still dying around, are dying maybe on a daily basis around the world than they are, then. Of course, then, 3,000 people died, boom, like that. Now I'm not saying 3,000 people are dying every single day, but accumulatively, millions of people have died. And again, thousands of American lives have ended because of that. And soldiers are committing suicide because of that. Probably a lot of the reason why they're committing suicide is because they realize the truth themselves. And they realize that, damn, I was in the military. I was fighting for my country, believing that I was defending democracy and freedom and all like this, when actually, now I know it was all based upon a lie. How would you feel if you maybe killed people and then you found out that you killed them based upon a lie? I don't know about you, but I think I'd be pretty damn depressed, and I'd be very pissed off. I'm pissed off, and I wasn't even in the war. I did have one of my oldest son went to war. I don't know, he may have killed people based upon that lie. He's not talking to me. He probably doesn't want to talk to me. Don't know why for sure, but he knows that I know the truth about why we were in that war. So this is why I am one pissed off American. And I don't know, how pissed off do we got to get before we do something about it? You know, I think that people are beginning to wake up because of this last election and what's has happened with Clinton and Comey. They keep on saying that the FBI is so great. It's just that Comey was bad or Mueller was bad or whatever. You know what? Sorry, I don't trust anybody in the FBI. Period. You know, they all the men and women of the FBI are so great. I don't know that. What I see, what I have seen of the FBI with Comey and now Mueller. I wasn't paying any attention when Mueller was the director of the FBI, but I know he's, doing a witch hunt on Trump right now. I'm not saying Trump is all innocent, but this whole Russian thing, I think, is a witch hunt. But all I see is crap coming out of the FBI. And this new guy they got in, forget his name, Ray something. I haven't seen him do anything either. The new director. What's he up to? I haven't heard a peep out of him. And, Sessions, what? Sorry, but he looks like a bumbling idiot to me. I don't get it. Anyway, a lot of reasons to be pissed off. And I think there's, if I'm seeing this, I'm waking up to this. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are waking up to it too. And they better start fixing things in government, because you get enough people waking up and realizing that things are not going to change on their own in government. For example, if Trump would have got in there and he would have said and exposed 9/11 for what it really was, and put Hillary in prison, and Comey too maybe, and Clapper, and said, hey, Julian Assange, you're a patriot, and Snowden, you too, you're a patriot, thank you for doing what you did. If he would have done all those things and maybe gotten us out of this Afghanistan and Iraq war, and done these types of things, then okay, country's going in the right direction. Nothing to worry about. Still a lot of things to get done, but we're going in the right direction. But that's not happening. So when you thought it was going to happen, but then it's not happening, what does that make you think? It ain't going to get any better. And so, it it fills you up, with this more and more crap, and finally, it gets up above your nose, and it's like, I can't breathe anymore. I'm, struggling to survive. I have children, I have grandchildren. I want a good future for them. And I'm not the only one. There's millions of Americans who I'm sure feel the same way. And we can only put up with so much crap out of our government when, the writing is on the wall. It becomes evident what's got to be done. And I think the American people eventually will, take things into their own hands and then take the government back. Because at this point, the government is not of the people or for the people. It's against the people. It's being run by people who don't give a damn. And at this point, it's like they're just laughing at us. Ha ha ha. Laughing. Clinton's running around doing her book signing thing. Free woman. What's this? You know? No justice under the law. No equality in the law. Crazy. The people can only take so much. So anyway, that's why I'm one pissed off American. Thanks for listening. Maybe I'll be back on later. Bye for now.